Welcome to the Crypto and Blockchain Talk.
Hello.
Hey.
Guten Tag.
Aloha.
Hola. Shalom.
Hello.
Namaste.
Ni hao.
Privet.
Hello.
Salut. Yassas.
Salve.
Ciao.
Bonjour. Our podcast talks about the latest trends in the worlds of cryptocurrencies and the blockchain. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Crypto and Blockchain Talk. And today with me, I have Adrian Krion, who's the founder and CEO of Spielworks, a blockchain-based gaming platform. And you know that we love our gamers. But we're going to go into all of what Spielworks is about. And of course, we're going to be talking about news and what's going on out there. But in the first instance, let's say hello to Adrian. Adrian, hello, and welcome to Crypto and Blockchain Talk.
Hey, Aviva. Thanks for having me tonight.
Well, thank you very much. And I have to tell you, we're really excited because, as you know, we love blockchain. We love the gaming community very much. The gamers are definitely the people who we talk to and who understand everything in this space very much. So we have a pretty huge following in that area. And the fact that you guys are allowing users to turn their gaming rewards into NFTs, this is kind of an interesting topic because I also want to find out a lot more of what Spielworks is doing. But, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now. I don't know if you've noticed, but Bitcoin has actually taken a turn, thank God, for the better. I know, right? And there's a lot of talk about why that's actually happening. Of course, the news on the street or the whispers on the corner is that Terra or Luna, that's the name of their crypto, is behind the recent surge in Bitcoin. I don't know. Did you actually hear about this?
As far as I noticed, Terra or the Terra Foundation or whatever kind of entity that is, they bought Bitcoin, right, for the treasury or something like that, right?
They did. Yeah, absolutely. They've been buying it, quite a bit of it, something like they're planning on purchasing for its reserves around 10 billion US dollars worth of Bitcoin. And they want to use this to back up their UST, which is their stablecoin for the Terra network. So it was, once this was revealed that they were planning to purchase this kind of amount of Bitcoin, apparently this has bolstered the Bitcoin community or the crypto community, and people have started to mirror or copy by what the Terra network are doing, and because they've already started to apparently purchase this Bitcoin. And a lot of people think that this is why Bitcoin's value is being driven up. So at the end of the day, they've just moved, Terra Labs moved about $125 million worth of USDT to exchanges. Do you think it's a good thing that when companies actually do these movements, do you think it's a good thing that people actually use this as the rationale to purchase Bitcoin or to stock up on more Bitcoin? Or do you think that these kinds of moves are almost false flags in a way, or just not really a good enough reason for people to think that this is a great investment? Almost akin to when Elon Musk used to open his mouth and say, you know, buy Doge, and then you'd see like a mountain of sheep follow in that direction. Do you think that this is a good enough reason for people to actually invest, or do you think they should still be doing their homework and finding out if this is a good enough reason?
Well, it's always difficult to tell people what to do, right? So I think that if people feel the impulse to follow somebody, then they should probably do so, understanding obviously what their risks are, right? I think that actually a crypto company buying crypto is actually less of a signal than non-crypto companies buying crypto for their reserves or for treasuries like MicroStrategy or Tesla or all the likes, right? So I think that, obviously Terra Labs are going to be bullish on crypto in general and Bitcoin in a certain way. And if they want to use it to back up UST, then that's probably a good idea because, Terra have been called out by various people to actually have created an efficient and effective Ponzi scheme with their UST, right? Not saying that this is true. I'm actually quite fascinated by what's going on Terra and with UST, but it's always hard with these companies and entities that are full on crypto, right? And they basically just increase the exposure. not sure whether that's generally a very strong sign for anything.
Love what you just said, because you're right. A crypto company buying Bitcoin, in my opinion, you're correct. It's not as significant than as if a non-crypto company decided to turn its face in that direction. And, that's one of the reasons why when Tesla actually decided to invest, a couple of trillion of their reserves into Bitcoin, when you see things just like what's happening with Terra, and of course, you're now looking at Mexico, who are also now saying that they're thinking about adopting Bitcoin as their de facto legal tender, especially hot on the heels after El Salvador. Do you think that having countries that have interesting economies, I don't think that's very inflammatory what I just said, because they do have interesting economies, Mexico and El Salvador. Because El Salvador, when a lot of people thought that was going to actually be one of the major boosts into making Bitcoin go very bullish, but it really didn't go that way. But now that Mexico is looking to follow in El Salvador's footsteps, do you think that Bitcoin is going to have a little bit more of a push upwards?
Mexico is a totally different kind of thing for Bitcoin. I mean, there's obviously two distinct effects that this has, right? Also what Terra Labs is doing. So if you just look at the kind of the signal, right, then the signal maybe isn't all that strong when Terra Labs or when El Salvador does that, right? But there's a second effect, which is a purely economic one, right? And if there's just enough money coming in, and 125 million is not a lot for Bitcoin, right? That basically just getting swallowed by the market, and it won't, even if you deploy that on the public markets, that probably won't do a lot to the price, right? But kind of size that will make a difference for the market, especially when you try to deploy that on the public market. That's typically not what's going to happen, but anyway, that is kind of a purely kind of economic move, right? And that is going to put some more buy pressure on Bitcoin. And this is what might happen with Mexico much more than with El Salvador, simply for the size of its economy, right? El Salvador on a kind of global level is not going to make a huge difference. And even if they're looking at placing Bitcoin-backed bond, right? I don't know. I don't remember the volume of that. I think that was $1 billion, right? Mm-hmm. That's not much, right? That's not a lot of Bitcoin that you can buy with that. It's not going to make all that much of a difference for Bitcoin, right? But if that's an economy of the likes of Mexico, that's going to make a huge difference, or a much larger difference at least, right? And plus this, and if we kind of go from small economies like El Salvador to larger economies, and Mexico is obviously a pretty big one, to even larger, that may have a ripple effect. And I mean, also Ukraine is looking at things like that now, right? And it's kind of obvious now with the war going on, but that they might be looking for other methods of stabilizing their economy or keeping it safe to a certain extent. But also other countries are looking at Bitcoin now. What was it that I heard?
You have a city in Switzerland, Lugano in Switzerland, has already pushed through using Bitcoin as well as Tether and their own like Lugano coin as official currencies in that city. That's happened kind of recently. And of course, you do have some places in the United States, some major cities, such as Miami, who are really trying to go down that kind of pulling for Bitcoin to be in full utilization throughout the city. And they start to pay like some city employees if they wanted to be paid in Bitcoin, et cetera, et cetera. How that's really going, I haven't checked up on that lately. But so there's a lot of places around the world that are actually moving in that direction. And there's actually quite a number of countries. We did a podcast on all the countries in the world that are looking to utilize Bitcoin in one way or the other within their currency systems. But yeah, you've got lists out there of all of these movements that are happening in this space. Bitcoin in itself as a method of payment, it's hard, it's slow, it is clunky in terms of using as a, you can't use it in terms of mass sales. It just folds. So do you think that using Bitcoin as a method of payment is a good idea, especially when a lot of people who have Bitcoin don't want to spend it. They want to hodl. So what do you think?
So again, I guess we need to distinguish Bitcoin as the network and Bitcoin as the
Absolutely.
token, right?
Yes.
So most people, I believe, when they're talking about Bitcoin, they're talking about the asset, not about the network necessarily. So I don't think that using the Bitcoin network for small payment transactions makes any sense. But I mean, that's like, I don't even think that we need to talk about that. I think that's clear to like most people, right? But I mean, Lightning Network obviously has been growing and growing. I still don't think it's quite there yet, where it needs to be in order to reach mass adoption. But it's getting better. There's a lot of people making big bets on that and believing into it and actually building, right? And that's a good thing for Bitcoin. Also as a network even, because obviously the Lightning Network that has to settle every once in a while, right, has to settle on the Bitcoin network, will help the Bitcoin network and the Bitcoin asset thrive. But what's more important, I believe, is the signal. Again, we're talking about signals, and it's kind of a marketing thing, right? When Bitcoin is accepted everywhere, then that's a good thing for Bitcoin as an asset class. It's like you can pay in gold. Maybe you don't want to, but you know that you could if need be, right? And the day will come when you actually want to liquidate it and you want to actually buy something from it, right? And then it's good if it's widely accepted.
So you have your platform, you have Spielworks, where users can turn gaming rewards into NFTs, right? So let's just talk about that, about them turning their gaming rewards into NFTs, because I'd like to hear why it is that they can turn their rewards into NFTs instead of maybe something like Bitcoin or some other cryptocurrency. So let's talk about Spielworks right now. What is it exactly that Spielworks does? And then let's talk about the rewards.
Maybe I'll start with a little story from back in the day. It's almost been 20 years. I always used to be, I always was a gamer since I was a little kid. I'm a bit like, I was born in the 80s, right? So I'm not that young kid anymore.
You're not an old man.
Sometimes I feel like I actually am. So I grew up in the 90s, so I played a lot of games, right? I played Game Boy, I played on our PC, I played on C64, I played on Amiga, Atari, and all kinds of things. And then when I went to study, I was always kind of looking at maybe I could go into gaming, but I kind of never made it. But I still went on to study mathematics and computer science. And back then I was sharing flats with a friend, and we were like studying a little bit, and then we were playing games a lot, right? And back then that was 2003 or 2004. Diablo 2 was a thing, and we were grinding a lot of Diablo 2. And we're also playing a racing game that was called Nice 2, Have a Nice Day 2. And in this game, you could actually upgrade your car by using, I don't know, credits or whatever. You could buy a better engine and whatever. And it was super cool, but you had to grind a lot in the game in order to do so, right? And we're like, hey, how cool would it be if we could use our gold that we grind for in Diablo to spend on a better engine, to convert into kind of credits in Nice 2 and spend on a better engine in Nice 2. So we had this idea of kind of an interoperability platform for games where you could like economically make them interoperable, right? And hey, this is pretty much what we're doing now, right? Almost 20 years later, we have this platform. It's called Wombat. Right, we started developing this in 2018. Been around for more than 4 years now, and we launched Wombat in June 2019 as a wallet, as a gaming focused crypto wallet, essentially, so that you could play the games. We're kind of betting big on gaming as being the catalyst for blockchain mass adoption, basically. And then we realized that there's way too few blockchain based games out there. Right. And even with all those games that are in the pipelines now, like it's still minuscule compared to the traditional gaming space. So what we did back in 2020, we said, okay, how about we add this layer of crypto and blockchain on top of traditional games, on top of existing traditional mass market mobile and desktop games. So that was the idea. So we launched OnePlay, which is our crypto rewards platform, right? What we did at first was basically pay our users whenever they played some of our games. So they had to download, they still have, they have to download the games through us, through OnePlay. And then whenever they reach a certain level in the game or when they reach a certain playtime, they get Wombucks. So that's a soft currency, the so-called Wombucks from us, right? And those Wombucks they can redeem for crypto. And that crypto, that can be, because we were originally on the EOS network, it can be EOS or it can be Bitcoin on the EOS network. So that is what you were asking for, right? Why don't we have Bitcoin? We do have that, right? But last year, on top of the crypto part, we also said NFTs. Like we've always been looking at NFTs, right? I was one of the early players of CryptoKitties back in 2017. I was super fascinated by NFTs. I was a speaker at NFT NYC 2 years ago, and all kinds of things. Right? So we were looking closely at NFTs. And last year, we gave ourselves a push when finally there was this auctions happening on Christie's, right? For
Beeple.
What's Beeple, right? For Beeple, and all these things suddenly started up, right? We said, okay, how about we add NFTs as kind of ways of showing achievements in a game, right? So we said, okay, let's. We spoke to some of our partners, and some of them quickly agreed to try it out. So we had our first game. It was Hero Zero, which is a mid-sized mobile and web game. 40 million downloads all time. And we said, okay, let's use some in-game assets, some in-game characters to create these NFTs. And so we spoke to the publisher, and they gave us the go, and we just minted 10,000 NFTs, which we gave out for playtime in that game, right? So if people played Hero Zero through OnePlay, they could receive for every 5 hours of playtime, they would receive an NFT. So we knew how our users, and now this story is getting a bit long, but sorry for that.
No, it's not long at all, and it's interesting.
So we said, okay, for every 5 hours of playtime in that game, our users can get a free NFT, and every 5 hours they can claim one, right? So we minted 10,000 NFTs, different ones, different rarities, and so on. And we thought that these would last for like 2 or 3 months, based upon what we had seen in terms of activity in the game before, right? With only crypto rewards. And now we added those NFTs, and suddenly people started playing the game much, much more, like 5 times more.
Jeez.
Right? So actually we ran out of these NFTs, of these 10,000 NFTs within 2 weeks. So we had to mint more, right? And we're like, what's happening? And it's not like they just kept the app open or whatever, right? But they actually played, and suddenly they started creating clans in the game. Our users started like talking about the NFTs, like which one did you get, which one did I get, which ones am I missing, what else is out there, how can I get this, how much is this, can we buy that, can we trade that, and these kinds of things, but also about the game, right? Because everybody knew that they would spend a lot of time in the game to grind NFTs. And so they probably wanted to make more out of that, and basically just started setting up clans. And suddenly we had 2 clans in the top 100 in the game, right? And these kinds of things. So that's very, very interesting. What happens if you don't just have an incentive that's monetary, but you have an incentive that's, well, beyond that. And we can talk about what that is.
Well, let's talk about what that is.
We were super fascinated by the fact that NFTs apparently are such a much stronger incentive, right? So we obviously ask ourselves why, and there may be so there's probably a bunch of reasons. Maybe we'll start with 3, and one is the one that we're actually going after. The first is that with these NFTs, because you could just receive a random one, there were some that were super rare, right? So there was just a 1 of 5. So those were actually traded on marketplaces for like $50, maybe $100, right? So obviously, if you get something like that because you got lucky, that's much better, and it may actually make a difference for you as opposed to grinding for crypto, because if you grind traditional games for crypto, they don't pay very well, right? It's not possible that this makes a real difference for you, except if you're in Indonesia or Philippines or wherever, right? That's obviously totally fine. But people from the US, for them, it will make a difference if they make 20 cents a day or so, right? However, if you receive an NFT that's worth $100, this actually might make sense for you, or this actually might make a difference for you. That you actually might go out for dinner or whatever. So that may be one reason, but another reason is that people like collecting stuff, right? And people specifically might like collecting stuff that they can't get elsewhere. So people start collecting that stuff, and the people started buying the remaining ones, and we started incentivizing having all of them, and we started gamifying all these things, right? So people actually wanted them for the sake of it. But also there's the third component, which I think that we should piggyback much more on, and this is, it actually shows that you've done something in the game, right? It actually shows that you've put effort into the game.
It's like a badge of honor, yeah.
It's like a badge of, like, it's what gamers do all day, specifically in games like MMOs, right? Gamers just play the game to show off. Like mostly, right? There was a nice survey that I've read last year that the main reason for gamers to play games, and 80% of the people were saying that, is not pure entertainment, but it's actually escapism, right? People want to live in a different world, in a virtual world.
Absolutely.
But if you want to live in a virtual world, status in the virtual world is obviously super important for you, right? Because this world is supposed to be, in whatever aspect, but it's supposed to be better than the physical, the real world, right? So you better look great, right?
Absolutely.
And so these NFTs that you collect, they actually show some kind of a status, right? And this is exactly what we want. We want to make these games, which are traditional Web 2 mobile desktop games, we want to make these games interoperable, not in the way that interoperability in games is mostly talked about when talking about blockchain, which is, hey, you can use that item from that game in another game, right? But because that's hard and that's not a technical problem, but we talk about two different types of interoperability. One is the exact one that I've just spoke about, this kind of social aspect, right, where you actually get to see certain aspects of status or certain achievements that people have made in a game. You see that outside of the game because it's NFTs, it's on the blockchain, it's on the public ledger, right? And you see that across games. So you can basically, if you have an identity of a gamer, you have a blockchain account, right, or a blockchain address, and you see the NFTs that they've received from games, from 5, 7, maybe 10 different games. You see how much you can get a feeling for how much effort they put into those games, right? And this is for us, that's a much stronger type of interoperability than reusing certain items, actually. And the other is the one that I spoke about with my friend almost 20 years ago, which is a kind of economical interoperability, right? Because you can use these items that you get from one game, even if that's just our reward NFTs, which are pretty much pure collectibles, but they still have a value. You can use them, you can flip them, and you can buy other stuff in other games, right? So that's the type of economical interoperability that we're interested in.
Those NFTs, they are operating then as kind of currency because you can use them in other games.
No, you can't. They're just pure collectibles.
Oh, so they are pure collectibles, but there's not like a secondhand market in between the games where people are kind of doing a buy and sell and trying to then trade off so that they can actually have the currency for another game. Is that something that you guys are?
That's exactly what happens, right? So they receive those reward NFTs, those pretty much pure collectibles that only have a meaning within our ecosystem. Mm-hmm. Some of the people actually like collecting them, so they would keep them and they would actually buy all others that they don't have, right? Mm-hmm. And other people would just want to flip them. And I mean, the gamers just want to, pure gamers, real gamers are not that much interested in making money by playing games, right? they actually do the exact opposite all the time. They spend money in order to have fun in games, right? Mm-hmm. So they exchange money for entertainment, not the other way around. So they don't want to cut on the entertainment factor. They just want to play great games. And if they do make some money on the side, what do? They spend it in games, right? They wouldn't buy coffee or dinner. They would basically, if they make $20 in a game by flipping an NFT that they got, well, they spend those $20 in another game, to buy another game, to buy stuff in another game. Yeah, that's what's interesting in that respect. And we don't do that, like I said, by allowing them to use the NFTs in other games. That may be, or that will be a possibility down the road. But right now we're focusing on this aspect. Yes, you can basically just use the currency that you've gotten from flipping an NFT to spend on another game.
So when you see that the SEC in the United States, the Securities and Exchange Commission, is homing in on NFTs and the creators of NFTs as well as the people who are buying them because they're questioning whether or not they are in reality securities, does that actually make you, first of all, does it make you want to cut out the U.S. market if they do pass a law that says NFTs are securities? Does it make you want to maybe have a different viewpoint on how those NFTs are actually utilized? Because if you're giving them away as rewards and the person isn't purchasing them, I mean, is this something you've already talked about with anyone to see if that is some way, shape, or form actually that you don't have to worry about at least the users of your platforms being roped into this mess that could be with the SEC, especially if the SEC does say, well, look, NFTs are securities and you now have to do a whole bunch of stuff if you intend on purchasing these. So how do you see yourselves addressing probably one of your biggest markets, which is the U.S., and keeping in mind that a lot of governments around the world are pretty much copycats of the U.S. SEC?
Yeah, I mean, I'm based in Europe. I'm based in Germany. We probably have one of the most progressive crypto laws and crypto regulations in the world, which is a good thing, right? And in that case, actually, at least the EU and Germany aren't following necessarily what's going on in the U.S. So we're probably being slightly ahead of the curve compared to the U.S. And there's some very similar discussions, but ERC tokens are not all the same in terms of regulatory scrutiny. An NFT offers you yield and at a certain rate, then it's for sure a security based upon laws and regulations in probably around 180 or 190 countries around the world, right?
So let me just ask you this. BlockFi, they agreed to pay this like $100 million fine. The SEC said, yeah, allowing for the platform to facilitate these trades and often at high interest rates and without getting approval as a bank or registering these services, they said, well, you're going to pay us now $100 million fine.
With things like BlockFi and obviously Celsius Network are having similar troubles. I kind of understand that from where regulation is coming from, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's retail consumer, retail investor protection. Yep. That there originally was the reason for all this regulation, right? And if you view it from that point of view, then it's totally reasonable to at least look at these kinds of services, although I'm a big fan of both of them, right? But it definitely makes sense to have a look at them and ask, okay, so is everyone putting in their money there? Are they informed what kind of risks they're bearing, right? And if the company goes bankrupt, will they get their money back? And these kinds of things. And this is documented properly. And so that is what a license would require, right? This is kind of a different story. And this is exactly why I'm talking about Pokemon or, I don't know, baseball cards or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Because these are originally not made as investment opportunities, right? These originally are made as utilities, as cards that you can collect and use and expose and play with and whatever, right? So the SEC, I don't think the SEC would actually think, at least not today, maybe 5 years, 10 years from now, the SEC would actually consider Pokemon cards or baseball cards or Pogs or whatever other things you might collect or play with anywhere close to securities. right? So for us, game items are like that. And our argument, and we've been talking to a lot of lawyers about these things, in our eyes, it does make a difference what kind of NFT you have. And even within games, it's not just, hey, this is a gaming NFT, safe, right? Even gaming NFTs could obviously guarantee you a yield, and then it still might be a gaming NFT and a security, right? However, basically, if NFTs are just like Pokemon cards, or maybe even better because they're even more individualized, then there's no reason to assume these would be securities. Now, obviously, the SEC might get that wrong, obviously, right? And basically shut down all the NFTs. But I don't think that this is going to be permanent then, right? Because just like they've had this wave of basically saying, okay, every single token, whatever it is a security, right? And then suddenly there started to be exceptions. And now even Ripple have a good case, right? Even though it's, I don't know. I don't know whether they will actually pass the Howey test. Even with Ripple, it's not that much of a clear case, right? So I think even if they get it wrong, that's just going to be a temporary thing.
Well, it's kind of hard to talk about baseball cards anymore, knowing that both. So it's kind of hard to talk about baseball cards anymore, especially in light of the fact that now Topps as well as Panini are both pretty much NFTs, going down that track. But I obviously understand where you're coming from when you're talking about the actual physical, tangible, cards. But with the Pokemon stuff, I mean, look, every day it's a new rule. So we don't know what the future will hold, but it's good to know that you guys are actually already, though, talking to the right people and seeing, what's going to be happening. It's also interesting what you said in terms of how your NFTs are actually more coveted than actual cryptocurrency in itself. That's pretty spectacular. But I guess the perceived value that people see in these NFTs and in the marketplace itself is obviously seen as, like you said, for the amount of money you would make if you were actually going to be earning whatever cryptocurrency is probably less in value of what the perceived value of what the NFT would be, if that makes sense. It must have blown your mind when you saw what the results were.
Yeah, it did. And what's even more fascinating is that originally, like when you see something like that, whether that's just a one-time thing, whether that's just because of the hype, whether it's just because it's just one game, maybe, right? You don't know what the reason for that is. So you try to reproduce that. And funnily, we're able to reproduce that game over game, right? So we now have, I believe, 12 games with NFTs or 15 games with NFTs, like traditional games that we added NFTs on top, right? And we have a ton of publishers and game studios wanting to try that out because it's, adding NFTs into your game as a kind of traditional existing game, that's very risky because you don't know what your economy is going to look like. You don't know whether you will have to face backlash from your existing community, just like Ubisoft did and things like that, right? But if you have somebody else add NFTs as a layer on top of your game, only for a small group of users, only for a portion of users, right? Then that's very low risk, right? That's maybe that's worth a try, and that's exactly what we're seeing, and we're seeing great results in that, and we're seeing that gamers love it. We don't see any kind of that backlash, right? We've never had any single person saying, "Oh yeah, that's just a money grab," right? Or anything like that. We just hand out NFTs for free for users, for gamers who want to play games.
And I think that's also quite lovely that the reward system is, again, something that people are putting their own perceived value on, and they're not actually having to really pay for it, or do they have to pay for it in some way? What's entrance to get onto the games?
It's free to play games, so there is no kind of barrier. Obviously, you don't. So that means you don't have to pay money for it, but obviously you have to spend time, right? And I don't want to pretend that free to play is actually free to play because many people have to watch ads or whatever, right? Or spend a lot of time to grind the game. But that's what it's called, right? So all our games are basically free to play. Anyone can start playing them without spending any money, and then everyone can receive rewards without spending any money. So it's in your own discretion, basically, whether or not you want to spend money. We always wanted to reduce the barriers for gamers to get on the blockchain. I think that's a very effective way, and it shows by our numbers. We have over 1.7 million signed up users, right?
Oh, geez. 1.7 million users. What, since you started in 2018?
Yeah, we launched Wombat in 2019, so ever since, within those 2.5 years.
So what are you slated to do by the end of 2022?
In terms of users?
Yes.
I think we should end up being at around 4 million, like total signed up, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that they're all still active, but that's what we're looking at.
Well, you could add one to that. I'm gonna be looking at it today. I'm gonna be one of those people today. I know we mentioned Beeple. I have my own opinions on, NFTs. For me, they can either leave a good taste in my mouth or a bad taste in my mouth. I mean, it just depends on what's going on in that space. In terms of what you're doing, you see, I think that's a positive. I like what you're doing there. You're rewarding people with something which holds a value to them. They're doing something that they want to do anyway. They're not being coerced or being blindsided or, dare I say, even being conned into thinking it's one thing when it's another. They're in the headline all the time. And a lot of people are still new to this space and they're still learning. Even been involved in the war between Russia and Ukraine, because as we all know, the Ukraine has been using NFTs like war bonds. Well, they've raised in total in cryptocurrency over 100 million, or some reports say even close to 200 million, and just depends on what you're reading, what day of the week, and where your source is. Of that amount of money, something like 10 million of that was raised through the sale of NFTs. It's kind of weird in a way to make an NFT to support a war effort. The fact that you also have now a lot of artists who are coming forward and putting up NFTs in the namesake of the war to raise money. Do you think that actually lends to the NFT space having more legitimacy? What's your opinion on that?
I don't think that the public perception of any fundraisers for Ukraine, the perception is really that these are raised for war efforts at all. I think it's more like we're trying to help, or people are trying to help folks in Ukraine to survive, to buy things, right? Because they're in need of everything. So I think that that being the overall perception of the thing, at least in my bubble and probably adjacent bubbles, I think that this is going to do, if anything, and it's going to do good for the overall perception of NFTs in general. However, I don't think that NFTs in general are very effective, as a kind of a donation kind of thing, right? You can do that with anything. If anything, then they're a good badge of honor again, right? Yeah, you're showing off again, right? And that's something that's been around forever as well, right? People like talking about their donations. People, specifically rich people, they do huge fundraisers and actually waste a lot of money, right? By throwing huge parties. It's about showing off that you're trying to help, and there's nothing inherently bad about this, right? Even if I make it sound like that.
Well, you're right. There's nothing ever wrong with fundraising for anybody in need, of course. The problem, I think, with a lot of these NFTs is that funds that are being raised, especially in the name of help, perhaps are not going to the place where people intend for that money to go. Because obviously cryptocurrency scammers, and if you go onto Reddit right now, there's people who are compiling lists of people who are going into the NFT space and into the crypto space to take advantage of this situation when they have no intention of helping at all. So obviously you guys are a legitimate project. You're living everything in the right way, and you're entering into the crypto community with your arms wide open and with transparency all over the place. But you do have a lot of people who enter the NFT space, and they are not who they say they're supposed to be. In other words, cons and scams, and especially in terms of helping other people and raising money for other efforts. What would you say to people who really like the idea of collecting NFTs and maybe know how to look into the legitimacy of who or what or how their money is being used.
As usual, as with every Kickstarter project, with every IPO, as with anywhere where you put your money, right? And if it's a considerable amount or if it's a significant amount for you, only give money to people who you trust, right? And in Germany, if you want to donate to wherever humanitarian things, maybe in Ukraine, then you don't go to your neighbor or the guy on the street who asks you for money, right? You go to the Red Cross or like whatever well-known organizations there are, right? And you donate to them, right? And do the same thing with NFTs. If you want to buy NFTs for whatever reason, even if it's fundraiser, only buy that from people or from organizations who you trust and who look like, as usual. It's like, do your own research, right? It's hard to reiterate all that, but it's always that, actually. It always boils down to the same things. Crypto is no different. It's not no better or worse in that respect. It just makes it very easy to spend money on a cause and then being kind of screwed over, right? But it's like the psychology and the methods and the people, they're not different. They're still the same, and there's always been ways of scamming people.
Yeah,
right? And
unfortunately,
people have been falling into these traps ever since. And I don't know. Some people are very trustful, and they basically would trust others very easily, and that's typically not a good thing if you want to keep your money.
Absolutely. And I just want to remind all of our listeners again, remember to double, triple check everything that you do before you do give your hard-earned money over. I guess I'll also say the disclaimer at this point that nothing that myself or Adrian are talking about can possibly be construed as being investment advice. What you must do is do your own homework. And if you don't understand what you're getting into, find yourself a professional financial advisor. Going back to Spielworks. Now, you were saying before that you have like 15 games or how many games did you say?
We have 40 games in total.
40 games?
You should be looking at oneplay.io. There you see quite a bunch of games. Depending if you're in the US, you should see quite a bunch of games there. If you sign up and download any one of those games, you will be getting, as I said earlier, $1. And for those games which have an NFT Inside badge, you will also be receiving NFTs. And some of these NFTs are made using in-game property, like in-game characters or whatever. Basically, just our ecosystem NFTs that you can use for certain things within our ecosystem. There's a ton of things that aren't there yet, which we're currently building, specifically with regards to these NFTs, but there are like cosmetics, like those. You can get a confetti NFT that the website throw confetti for you every single time you tap on or you click on the logo, or whenever you type C while you're on the page.
That's really cool. And just to the NFTs that people are given, they're just randomly driven. So basically, people don't know what NFT they're going to get as a reward. Correct?
Exactly. That's something I'm disclosing this already. It's something that we're working on, is that the rarity of the NFT will depend on kind of the milestone that you reach. So the deeper you're in the game, the more valuable your NFTs will become. We're not there yet. Right now they're random, right? But in the future, we'll switch that up.
That's really cool. So how are you developing these new games for your platform then? Do you have some kind of hackathon? Or do you have like open investment rounds where you say, okay, submit a game and maybe we'll invest in it and put it up here? How are you getting the new games?
These are not our games, right? We don't develop or publish the games.
Oh.
These are games that have been around, some of them for 10 years or even longer. These are proven mass market games, right? Some of them have tens, others have so millions of downloads. And our goal was, creating games is hard. Right? creating games that are fun and that people want to play, that's really hard. Mm-hmm. So we didn't want to kind of bet big on ourselves being able to build a ton of games or to find out which games are going to work. So we know that these games that we have on the platform, that they're proven winners in a way, right? Some of them are more indie, smaller games, but some are AA, AAA mobile titles, and some of them are on desktop as well. So things like Raid Shadow Legends or Lots Mobile, they have like 200, 300 million downloads. So we know these are great games, right? So we convinced the publishers to do a deal with us, right? And to allow us to have these games on a platform and pay users crypto and sometimes NFTs for playing these games. And that's what we do, right? That's why we have them on the platform. We want to provide really good content, and for us, it's not about play to earn, right? We don't want to go in that direction where people play games in order to earn money. People should still have fun, right, playing games. And if they get some extra money or NFTs on top, that's great. Some people, very few people, will be able to make a living off of that, but most people will not. And that's totally fine because, like I said earlier, right, most people play games for fun and they don't make money with that. They spend money. Sometimes they spend hundreds, sometimes they spend thousands, sometimes they spend tens of thousands of dollars a year. Just playing games. It's a hobby.
Okay, so what is the next step for WOMplay? What's new and up and coming, and what's something that's going to really just, blow people's minds?
So many things that we have in the pipeline. So first up, we not only have WOMplay, we also have the Wombat app. It's still out there. We have pretty much 1 million downloads on that. It's an integral part of our ecosystem, and we're integrating the Wombat app and the WOMplay reward system into the app so that it's all accessible from inside the app directly, right? Right now, it feels like two things, and we're going to make one thing out of that. This will come with a major redesign, so we're frantically working on this, and that's definitely a major thing. We're also working on different reward schemes. We don't want to actually focus that much on kind of monetary rewards, right? We want to focus more on the social side of things. We're working on social aspects of the platform, so there's a friend system, right, and these kinds of things. And this should actually go as far as you should be able to see a feed of what your friends are actually doing with their NFTs, what they've received from games, and if they've traded these or if they've kept them, and these kinds of things, right? So we want to focus much more on kind of this, hey, let's play together part, rather than just make money. And then the problem with play to earn is obviously that if another game pays better, then you'll just play another game, right? It's like yield farming, basically. So we want to focus on creating deeper connections between gamers and between gamers and games.
This is such a young space still. Even with all the education that's out there, there's still a lot of problems with adoption. You're entering this still at a very early stage. I think you guys are really going to hit it large, and I'm really seriously impressed. Adrian, hats off to you. Thank God you started to play games at the age of whatever.
Yeah.
It's paying off.
Finally, after some years, I can do something with gaming. Yeah.
I know, right?
It's what I felt back in 2018 when we were actually looking at all kinds of different business models and applications and whatever that could be built on blockchain, right? You remember the time when in 2016, 17, 18, everybody was discussing like, oh, blockchain is awesome, but what could we use it for?
Yep.
Right? Like really. And I was actually pretty happy that we settled on gaming, because finally I could actually get to build something in the gaming space, which like I have no professional kind of gaming background from before 2018, right? But it's a very fascinating space, and it's a lot of fun, and you get to play games a lot, right?
Where do I sign up?
Great. I always thought that mobile games are pretty boring until I found some of the games that we have on the platform. And sometimes you get stuck, right? And we add new games every few weeks. Some of them actually get stuck, right? And then you end up playing these many games, and then you don't want to let them go, right? Because it's so kind of this free-to-play game scheme, right? And it's just fascinating. And I've gotten to play more games, which is awesome.
What are you kidding? That's everybody's dream, no matter what your age. And by the way, have you rubbed your parents' nose in it yet, saying, do you remember those times you used to scream at me? Well, now it's paying off. Ha ha.
They actually didn't, and I've got two kids myself, and I was asked in another interview a few weeks back if I want to allow my kids to play, and I was like, hell yeah, I definitely want my kids to play digital games, obviously also like other games, right? And I want them to do sports and stuff, but of course they're allowed to play games. I don't think that it hurt me, and I don't think it's bad for you to play games. And I really used to play a lot, like with all these LAN parties and doing overnights and stuff like that, right? It's been a lot. And my parents actually were never angry. They were like understanding, let's put it that way. They didn't like it, but they weren't really angry.
Well, I have to tell you, they're the exception to the rule.
I guess so.
Yeah, they really are. So you better go and take them out for a really big dinner and thank their lucky charms that they became your parents, because otherwise you wouldn't be doing this today. Lord only knows what you'd be doing. You'd probably sitting in Deloitte and Touche typing into some calculator for all we know. So
maybe.
Yeah, you never know. You never know what the alternate universe would have had planned for you. But listen, Adrian, thank you so much for coming on to Crypto and Blockchain Talk. It's been a surreal and amazing pleasure to have you on here. Your journey as well as your product is amazing.
Thanks a lot for getting the opportunity to be on the show, and for the interesting discussion and for the great questions. Thanks a lot.
No worries. I would like to thank everyone for tuning into Crypto and Blockchain Talk. Please ask your friends and family to download this beautiful podcast on one of over 70 different podcasting platforms. We have a partial list on cryptoandblockchaintalk.com, and the rest, well, to be honest with you, you can find them on every major and even minor podcasting platform that's out there. Furthermore, this beautiful podcast will be streamed on our sister radio station, crypto24radio.com. That's crypto24radio.com, playing 24/7 around the world, these beautiful podcasts, like I said, plus news, music, and more. In addition, we do love to hear from you on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, but what we love most of all is to hear from you directly through, yes, email. Email us at education@savvydigital.com. When you tune into us, you have no idea what it means, because our team is so happy that you choose to spend your time with us. So please be safe, take care, and goodbye for now.